What? What? Rachel in the house. Cuban coffee.
I was going to say, this is something. I might be talking a mile a minute by the end of this.
Oh,
podcast.
you so are.
I'm a little worried.
It's to get work done. You're gonna love it. Señorita Rachel, bienvenido a Right Boundless Podcast.
Muchas gracias.
Cheers, salud.
Salud.
¿Qué tal? We were just talking about Cuba. We're going to jump in a bunch of different topics.
That's
We're
fine.
going to jump into marketing, motorcycles, modeling.
The whole thing.
But we were just talking right now about your trip to Cuba, which is along the motorcycle chingadera.
Yes.
Tell me more.
So every February, I believe around Valentine's Day, they do the Harlistas Cubanos, which is basically like a Harley Davidson meetup and ride down in Cuba. And I went back in, I want to say it was 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
With a couple of my moto friends, and we had to get visas and do the whole, rigmarole to get down there. And it was my first time to Cuba. I'm well traveled. I've been all over the world. I was dying to go to Cuba.
Yeah.
Because two reasons. Number one, motorcycles. But number two, I was kind of a fan, as many people were, of Che Guevara.
Yeah. Motorcycle diary.
Exactly. Talk about a moto story. So when I got down there, I think I was reading, I think his book or one of them. And my friends and I got into town, and they were like, oh, well, we come every year, and there's this bar that we like to go to. It's owned by Ernesto. We'll introduce you to him and like whatever. And it's like, okay, great. I'm following your lead. My first time to Cuba. Let's do this. And we go to the bar, and Ernesto was a very nice gentleman, and we were literally just popping to see him real quick. We just popped in and out, and we get back in the car, and my two friends that I'm traveling with were like, yeah, so what did you think about Ernesto? And I'm like, he seems great. Why?
Like a normal dude, yeah.
And they're like, that's Ernesto Guevara. And I'm like, I'm sorry, stop this cab. That's Che Guevara's son that you just introduced me to?
Whoa.
And there was no lead in?
Yeah. Like what? Yeah.
Can we go back? I have
Yeah.
so many questions.
Wow. Wow.
So Ernesto Guevara owns a very popular bar in central Cuba.
In Havana.
In Havana. And it's kind of like the stop off for all the Harlistas Cubanos before we go out to the island to do the actual ride. So
I did not know.
Don't miss that.
No. Yeah, I got to go back. What did you think of? Did you go outside of Havana? Did you go anywhere outside, like Viñales or Varadero?
It was
Santiago.
It was one of the beach towns. That's where like
Varadero is probably the closest. It's like an hour and a half or something.
Yes. And it was a beautiful ride. We rode through sugar canes the entire way.
Did you go under the tunnel? Oh, of course you had to.
I had to. And there was like monkeys. No, I love island terrain, and I really liked Cuba. So I consider myself a conscious tourist. That's like my self-title.
What does that mean?
So I'm well traveled. I intentionally go to a lot of countries, and I know that's a privilege.
It's a very big privilege.
It's a big privilege, and I do not take it for granted.
At all.
So my way of giving back and making it worthwhile for me and others is by being a conscious tourist. So two things. Number one, I do a ton of research on local laws. I learn as much of the language as I possibly can before I get there. I learn local customs. I pack appropriately. And I try to be as respectful as I possibly can. Number two, I leave no trace. And if I do leave a trace, it's only a memorable one, and it's a positive one.
Right.
So a lot of times when I travel, I will sync up with local charities and volunteer while I'm there. I like to talk to locals and ask them, basically interview them. Like, I want to know, like, what do you think about your government? What's different about your government? Like, I want to learn, right?
Yeah.
And so I take the information that I learn and I share it to my Instagram. What used to be a blog, I had a site called waywardroamer.com. Wayward Roamer is still my Instagram handle. But I used to share all sorts of things from my conversations and interviews and just interactions with people. And that was kind of my mark and way of giving back to those who might not necessarily have the privilege of traveling.
Yeah. And so many don't.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I think travel, well, I don't think. I know travel is probably the best education a person can have
Yeah.
because it offers you perspective. And there is nothing more critical to understanding than perspective.
Yeah.
So it is why I constantly am itching to travel. I just want to be traveling full time at all times. So as a conscious tourist, when I was in Cuba, I was, of course, the big question on everyone's mind is like the government, right? I mean, there's so much information about the Cuban government that we've been given. Say that carefully.
Right. Fed.
That we have been fed over the past few decades, in particular, that I think lead to a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah.
And so it is important for me to dispel of misconceptions if I'm going to travel to a particular area, especially and I'm doing air quotes right now, controversial one or seemingly controversial one. So when I went to Cuba, I dispelled a lot of misinformation for myself, which was great. So firsthand, I was able to experience interactions with young people, old people, middle-aged people, and they all seemed very pleased with their government and seemed to be leading really awesome lives. And
2016.
2016, mind you, yes.
A lot's changed.
They've been through a lot. But yeah, so that was one of many examples of, traveling to a place that probably gets a bad reputation in general.
It gets no reputation now.
Now no one even talks about
Nobody even
it.
knows
Exactly.
Cuba.
That and Puerto Rico, I feel like they're just like they're like the underdogs, but both lovely, lovely places.
Well, the thing that gets me, and
and you're from there.
And I'm from there, and I apologize to dive so deep in it, but the crazy part about Cuba is that in 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, there was no Miami.
Oh, no.
There was no Las Vegas.
You know what there was, though?
What?
Ernest Hemingway.
There was Ernest Hemingway. There was Al Capone.
Yep.
There were all the casinos.
Yep.
It was
there was gun running.
There was prohibition in the United States. Everybody went there. The first international flight out of the United States, Cuba.
That makes sense.
90 miles away. The cigars, the sugar, the strawberry daiquiri, the mojitos. Bacardi was from Cuba. You know, now they had to move to Puerto Rico because of the embargo. So I was just watching, because I like putting this video, YouTube. I usually put like Cuba 1930s. And they have like videos of how Cuba was. Everybody's in suits.
Well dressed. Oh my God.
Amazing.
Miami got their fashion from Cuba.
From Cuba.
I mean, there's 100%. They did not think of that on their
check
own.
this out. So I always like looking at these videos to show people, like, look what Cuba was in the 30s. Like I'm sorry, but I've been to Mumbai. I've been to many countries. I've traveled all over the world myself. You look at Cuba 1930s, Dubai wasn't like that.
No.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Parts of Mexico today are still not like that.
True.
So you look at Cuba, how rich it is. And then I found a fashion show in the 1940s in Cuba, and it was Chanel, and it was Balenciaga, and I didn't know Balenciaga was that old, and it was Balenciaga.
I've spent 20 years in fashion, and I didn't know about this. You have to send me this information.
It's beautiful, and then the guy talking, the narrator goes, "This collection's only available in Paris, Havana, and Beverly Hills."
Oh my God, I love it.
So Cuba was like this high status casino, Miami, Vegas. I mean, it was insane, and none of those things even existed. I mean, I believe some people even say casinos were even started in Havana, and which I never dove deep in that. But if you go to their history, it's so rich. And now people like, hey, where are you from? Cuban. Do you speak Cuban? I'm like, what?
They accept the U.S. dollar down there, just saying.
Well, so 2016 was my first year there, because my mother was like, don't go to Cuba. That's not my Cuba. That's Fidel's Cuba, blah, blah, blah. Don't, So I had never gone. And then Obama opened it up. And I was like, all right, well, I'm in Miami right now, so it's like
it's a hop, skip away.
It was one of the most beautiful flights in the world.
It really, and short.
That, I guess,
to get to an international destination.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then there was a point where I was flying and I was looking out the window, and there was like a part where it's like I didn't know what was the ocean or what was the sky, and everything just kind of blended in. It was truly a beautiful flight. And when I got there, I was like, man, this is amazing. Anyways, the Cubans then to right now oh, it's a 180.
It's
a shit show because 3 years ago they introduced Wi-Fi. They call it Wi-Fi.
Yes. So when I was down there, and again, I did my research before I went. I knew that you could only get Wi-Fi in public parks,
right?
And only certain public parks, and only at certain times. Also at that time, and I don't know if I haven't done my research, so correct me if I'm wrong, but or if they're still doing it, but the government would also shut off electricity from 6 p.m. until...
Now they're doing that more than ever.
So they were regulating...
But in 16, no Facebook, no Instagram, no social media.
Yeah, it was like VPN blocked. So when I was down there, one of the big things that I noticed because of that, first off, I think I spent like my first day trying to chase down Wi-Fi in the public parks, which was kind of a fun way to travel because I was like, oh, I wouldn't have walked here like had that not been the case, and found amazing little restaurants and cafes, etc. But another thing that I noticed was what a cool concept to get people outside, in a beautiful park, Or granted, they were on their phones, but still.
Malecón by the ocean,
exactly.
Road. Everybody's there at night.
Everyone's there at night, and when they shut down the electricity, it was like clockwork. And I remember being out in one of the little alleyways at the time that they did it. And my friend that I was with kind of like nudged me and was like, watch this. And these people just started coming out of their homes onto the streets. And they had buckets and like little wooden, like, flat surfaces essentially. And they made tables out of that to play chess or other games.
Yeah, checkers, dominoes.
And they look so damn happy. They're like enjoying it. They're so present.
That was their social media.
It was phenomenal. I had a blast. I also had my camera with me, so I was taking all sorts of film photography of said interactions. I found it to be so old world, genuine, authentic, present in the moment.
And you eat at people's houses.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, yeah, and we were talking about it earlier, but I was told not to stay in a hotel because a lot of the hotels in Cuba were run by the government, and the money basically skipped the local hands and went straight to the government. And so if you wanted to be a conscious tourist, you wanted to not, if you book a hotel, you're not a conscious tourist. So I didn't want that scar on my, mark on my reputation. So I ended up booking a Casas Particulares, which is owned by locals, and the money goes directly to them. So basically imagine very inexpensive Airbnbs, but they're also actual bed and breakfasts run by locals. So great way to get to know locals. Beautiful, beautiful architecture in Cuba.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
I describe it. It's a Caribbean island with Caribbean beaches, but European
like
buildings.
A Baroque, like odd twist.
Yeah. Havana celebrated 4 years ago 500 years.
Oh, it's old.
Yeah, which is old, like compared to U.S.
Oh yeah, we're like teenagers. Yeah, exactly. And especially our architecture. It's nothing to write home about. Unfortunately, but yeah, I stayed in like the coolest, cutest place, and I want to say it was $25 a night.
Oh, easy.
But that 25 went straight to the family we were staying with, and that made me sleep better at night. But yeah, Cuba was a great experience. And I was talking about this the other day with someone. They were like, well, I hate it when people ask me this, what's your favorite place you've been to? And I'm like, literally cannot answer that question. It's been over 52 countries. Like I can't, Wyoming, I don't know.
What?
Tetons are amazing. Yeah. But Cuba is high up there because of the experience that I had, especially with the information that I gained from the locals. Argentina was definitely one of the other ones. I went down there 2012. I did a build with Habitat for Humanity.
That was a good time too.
It was an interesting time because their banks actually ran out of money.
That happens every couple of years in Argentina. Yeah.
So there was literally no currency to be exchanged down there because of the government and the situation they were in economically. And I was introduced, because I was working with Habitat for Humanity and doing a build, we were introduced to a local woman that was basically our liaison with the local family and the local builders, etc. And she turned out to be like the Jane Fonda of Argentina, and was just this like rebel,
badass,
total badass in the 60s, like, putting daisies in guns kind of woman. And she introduced me to one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And it's called The Open Veins of Latin America. And oh my God, I know I've read it at least twice, but it tells you all sorts of stuff. And if you're going to travel to South America or even Central America, because it informs you on both, but it's not a travel book. It literally describes all the way back to like the, Mayans and the trials and tribulations of Latin America. And knowing what I know now because of that book and it enriched my experiences. And it also drives why I travel. So like I'm going back to South America in March. I'm going to be doing Patagonia, and I'm going to reread Motorcycle Diaries and try to kind of backtrack some of that path, because I find stuff like that to just be extremely motivating. And especially with the motorcycle tie-in, I kind of gauge a lot of my travels are guided by the books that I read, to be quite honest. Like Hemingway actually is what primarily brought me to Cuba. And I sat at the cafe where he wrote Old Man in the Sea, and he just stared out this window writing Old Man in the Sea. And being able to do that personally just...
Did you see his house on Varadero?
Oh my God. And the paper that's still in the typewriter. Yeah. I mean, by the way, so the story behind that, the fact that there was still toilet paper in the bathroom kind of thing, because Fidel Castro ran him out. They had like a falling out. And Hemingway was back and forth constantly between Key West, his house in Key West, and Cuba. And him and Fidel Castro had a falling out like mid-run, I guess. I don't know. Well, there's a lot going on. And he banned him from coming back. So Hemingway literally just left his house as is. So it's just there.
He didn't come back?
He didn't come back. They wouldn't let him back.
No.
And he's got a boat there, which, by the way, where his house is nowhere near water.
Yeah.
He's just got a boat there.
Yeah. On
the property. It's strange, but it's absolutely phenomenal. I'm a big Hemingway fan. Yeah.
No. I Cuba for me, I've been to India. I've been, it was Mumbai, China, Russia, Armenia. The smallest thing that I love about Cuba is there's no McDonald's, there's no Sheraton, there's no Hilton, there's no Burger King, there's no talk. Yeah. I went to Armenia, where there was like one of the oldest churches in the town, because they're the first Christian country. They accepted Christianity as a country. So it's like you go to this, old 3,000-year-old church or something.
Made out of like toothpicks, yeah.
and there's like a Pizza Hut, not too far, and a KFC.
Yeah, I know.
And then same thing, I was in Mumbai. I was like walking like by the slum and stuff, and this, that. And then you walk 5-10 minutes later, and there's like a glass door with gold handles. You push it open, there's a Victoria's Secret and Rolex. I'm like,
but there's a cow on the way in,
right?
Too.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, that adds.
No, it has its stuff, but there's... Why is there a Pizza Hut here, man? Like,
I'm telling you.
It's insane.
That's why when people ask, "Oh, what's your favorite country?" I'm like,
it's hard.
You'd be surprised. It's hard because it's like Cuba was unique. I did walk away with bronchitis, though. I will say that's the one negative.
Really? I never got sick though.
Diesel.
No.
All that diesel in the air. I was not prepared for it.
And all that. How long were you there for?
I was there for a week, and we did absolutely rent an old car. Drove around.
Everybody, why?
It's the most cliche thing to do, but like
you have to.
You absolutely have to.
And the locals appreciate it.
Oh, they love it. Yeah, it was a blast. I had a blast. Actually, we took the old car to Hemingway's house. I've got pictures. And again, Instagram was like a new thing, so I didn't really share a whole lot of the trip on my Instagram.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
2016. It was
like
newish.
2-3 years.
Yeah, people still hadn't caught on. There was no OnlyFans yet.
Yeah. What's that? Wah, wah, wah. How'd you get into motorcycles?
Oh, that was another thing I was thinking about the other day. So, avid reader. I like reading psychology books as well. And a friend had recommended, I need to figure out who this friend was because I need to give them the due credit. The proper credit. And I cannot pinpoint who told me about this book. But I read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. And it was one of those books. There's only been 2 books in my life, to be quite honest, that threw me. And one of them is Cormac McCarthy's The Road. And I have actually talked to other people who've read that book, and they had a very similar experience. I didn't use electricity for 2 weeks after I read that book.
Wow.
It did things to me. And they, like other people I've spoken to are like, dude, I didn't drive my car for like a month after I read that. It's a post-apocalyptic, like Armageddon kind of situation.
Yeah.
They made it into a movie. The book is 1,000 times better. Anyways.
Everybody says that.
Everyone says that. But Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance changed my life in many ways. And the way that he talks about why he got into motorcycles, and so Robert he was a writer, but he wrote instructional booklets.
Yeah.
For like vacuum cleaners and like whatever.
Like directions or
yeah, but like really copy intensive.
Detailed,
Yeah, that was kind of what he did for a living, and he also was a professor. And I don't want to be quoted for this, but he seemed like the type of guy who suffered from ADHD as well as other psychological things that if you read the book, you will know.
Don't all the greats do.
Well, so like that's why he had that job. Only a person with extreme attention to detail would be able to write instructional manuals, Oh. And so he got into motorcycles, and when he did, he used it as kind of like a form of therapy. And he would take them apart, like piece by piece, lay all the pieces out in like a categorical manner, and essentially reverse engineer the building of a motorcycle. And I found that to be insane.
Yeah.
But the way he writes about it and how he draws the correlation to the human mind and the search for meaning and inner peace, that book really, really just had an impact on me. And after I finished reading it, I was like, I need to get a motorcycle. I need to get a motorcycle, and I need to get it, and I need to take it apart, and then I need to put it back together.
Oh my God.
Mind you, I had never touched a motorcycle in my entire life at this point. This was 2016. So I immediately went and got my M1. I signed up for the ammo classes and had a blast, but was also really intimidated. I did a bunch of research on how to be a passenger. That was like my first step. I was like, I want to learn how to appropriately sit on the back of a bike.
So important.
It's important, and I think a lot of people don't think about it. But the guys that I ride with will always joke that they have to tap to see if I'm still behind them on the bike, because they're like, you don't even feel like you're there. But yeah, so that's how it started. That's how my obsession started from a psychological standpoint, actually.
And what steps did you take to learn how to be a passenger? Like, is there a book called How to Be a Passenger on a Motorcycle?
I'm sure there is.
But what advice? Because now I'm hinting at let's give some knowledge to future passengers.
I also I say this with a grain of salt. I'm going to get attacked for this. No, there's
no attacking.
There's no right or wrong way to approach motorcycle riding.
There
is. Approach it with respect. I don't if you're a speed demon and you're an adrenaline junkie.
Get the fuck out of here.
Honestly, that's fine, but still have a healthy level of respect for it. It's a machine, and you are part of the draw for me was I'm a big camper. I love being outdoors. Oh my God, I love being outdoors. And I kind of like being in danger, but not for the adrenaline side of it, more for the survivalist side of it, where it's put me under pressure and see what I can do.
Yeah, you like testing yourself.
Yeah. And it's empowering. It's extremely empowering. And also I don't like being cooped up in a car. Who does? But so
a lot of people
actually, in the comfort of their own car, with the radio playing and the heat on, and motorcyclists are the exact opposite. But I approached it with an extremely healthy respect. I have absolutely no desire or need for speed. I am not that kind of person. No. Again, this was psychological for me. So learning how to be a passenger first, I felt was the most respectful way to join the community. Especially because I had never touched a bike. My dad was not into it. No one in my family ever touched a bike. So
interesting.
I was blazing a new trail for my family. So I went on YouTube. I read a bunch of blogs. It was a lot of blogs at the time. And I talked to writers, asked them hey, well, what is something, that annoys you, or any advice, stuff like that. And of course I got the same advice. Everyone would say, okay, when I'm shifting gears or when I'm starting from a stop, don't bump into the back of my helmet.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you got your, expensive helmet and you're like, dude.
Yeah, and you're just, you're basically just headbutting them the entire time. Also, don't lean the other way. It's, and don't lean too hard the way that they need to lean. So there was a lot to it, and I wanted to learn that first. And
the amount of passengers that I've had that when I get to a red light, they just lean over and like, this is fun.
Oh my God.
And they shift all their weight. And I don't have a leg on that side. I'm like, what are you doing? I wanted to talk to you. You don't have to look at me to talk to me.
No. I mean, and again, you would think it's common sense.
Right.
But it's not. It's really not. And that's what I learned through my process of like kind of approaching it extremely slowly. And I had a lot of dumb questions that I think a lot of people probably don't think to ask. A lot of people I know, also a lot of riders, they grew up around bikes. So like the concept of clutch, or they learned how to drive a stick car. I did not. So again, clutch, all that brand new to me.
Wow.
So I remember my first ride. This is kind of funny. Shout out to VVMC.
VVMC.
I messaged them on Facebook because I was like, I think I want to I didn't have a bike yet, but I was like, I want to ride with someone that's like trustworthy in these. I was not afraid of the MCs. I didn't have like a, Sons of Anarchy notion, about them. I was like, no, these are just guys. Yeah, exactly. I was like, these are just guys that like to ride. Like, what a cool concept. So that was my intro into the quote unquote community. I did a ride with the VVMC. I reached out to Eddie, and he directed me to a guy named Ryan Savage. And I was supposed to ride with Ryan Savage. I had put so much effort and research into my gear, and it was the first time I was going to be able to use it. Granted, I was going to be a passenger, but still, I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to wear my like Dionysi jacket and my showy helmet, and because I didn't get like pretty stuff. I got I got like legit stuff. I dressed for the ride, dressed for the slide, not the ride. So anyways, so then the day of the ride, it's like 6 a.m. and I get a message on Facebook from Ryan, and he goes, dude, I can't make it. And I'm like, I'm literally on my way. Like, and I've never met these people.
Hold on. Wait. Ah.
There you go. And I was like, and I'd never met Ryan either. Yeah. I mean, so I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Yeah. And so he was like, dude, just show up. There's like a ton of people there. And again, I'm like, okay, like do I just ask them? Like, what do I do? So anyways,
That's so fucking hilarious.
Well, okay, first off, he got a flat. That's why he couldn't.
Yeah. No, but it's hilarious to just show up.
Oh.
Dirty blonde.
I have all this build
gear.
up. No, and then I have all this like mental, anticipation.
Well, there's your side of it, but then there's like the biker side of it where it's like, oh man, I wish I could take somebody out for a ride, and then you pop up.
It got like, hey, again, privilege. So that's what eventually happened. I got there. They're doing their whole spiel before they ride, going through the rules and whatnot. And I meet Eddie because I recognized Eddie. So I was like, I'm at least going to introduce myself. And if I don't get on the back of someone's bike, it's not the end of the world. There'll be other rides.
Right.
But secretly inside, I was dying, right, at that possibility.
With all your gears.
I had my helmet. Oh, man. If someone had taken a picture of me, they would have been like, oh. So I get there, and I tell Eddie what happened. And he's like, oh, my God, literally get on the back of any of these guys' bikes. And he said, actually, hold on. I'm going to introduce you to a couple of them, and they're the ones that I think would be the safest and most cautious with a precious cargo. And I was like, I appreciate that. Yeah. Mind you, I also was the only girl there.
Right.
So I end up getting on the back of, God, what was his name? He's not even with them anymore. Very nice man. And we ride all the way down to Long Beach to a moto show. So it was just a whole day. And again, it was the first time I was on a motorcycle.
Like, was it a comfortable bike at least?
He had a Harley Softail. So yes, it actually probably was the better bike to be on.
Yeah.
Because Ryan Savage, later on, skip forward, became my riding partner. And he had a tiny Sportster.
Like 1200.
With a very uncomfortable passenger seat. But he's basically my brother now, so...
That's awesome.
And we've put a lot of miles on that bike together. But it was a very interesting first experience. They could not have been more welcoming. I could not have felt safer. it was awesome. And so from that moment on, I was like, yeah, this is my thing. I'm gonna really dive deep into this, and I did. I eventually got my own bike from Schwarzkopf. Shout out, across from Bartels.
And Bartels. Woo.
Yeah. And,
Love Bartels.
and they were great. They knew it was my first bike. They found a great deal for me. Patu from the VVMC came with me to pick it up, and it was a Harley Sportster 2001, had been modified, beautiful matte black, just everything that I wanted.
1200
Simple.
or 883?
It was an 883, but it was modified, so it rode like a 12.
Yeah, for sure.
And I
doesn't take much to get it there.
Nope. And I really liked the simplicity of it because, again, my intention was going to be to take it apart and put it back together.
Yeah, of course.
So I didn't want anything too new. I didn't want a lot of computerized anything. I wanted to start very analog as much as I could, because the way that I learned things is like I wanted to understand the inner mechanics of the machine that I would be riding, you know? So that was a big deal for me, and that's kind of the long answer to your very short question.
That's awesome. I love hearing how people get into motorcycles, because it's not too common that people get into it later in life or
sight unseen,
or they're outside. Yeah, exactly. Like I got into it when I was probably 16, 17, just because a friend of mine, nobody in my family ever rode, but I had a friend of mine, they were into dirt bikes, and they were like, hey, we're going to Mojave Desert, ride, come with us. And I just went out there. Yeah. And everything they gave me, I crashed. Everything.
Which is kind of the best way to
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Especially at that age, because you have less fear.
You're very nimble, and then, then I just started getting into it. But my point is most people, especially people that I've interviewed, it's like, oh, I've been riding since 5 years old. Yeah. I've been riding since 6. My dad used to ride me in the back. I know people that, I was talking to a guy, do you know Rawhide?
It sounds...
They're in Santa Clarita. They teach on the BMWs, the GSAs. They have like a course, and they teach like...
I need to take that. I would totally take that.
Oh, first of all, you get to camp out there for like 2-3 days.
Oh, sold.
And
immediately.
They have outdoor camping, and then they have indoor camping.
You're going to send me this information.
They have the best gourmet food. Jim Hyde has the best gourmet kitchen. He's got like these obstacles. He's got like a lake and a river and mountains, and then they take you through a bunch of rides. Like there's the St. Francis Dam. Are you familiar with that? Where Mulholland's thing. Yeah. They'll take you in through the. I mean, it is insane. By the time you're done, I like the way Jim describes it. You get on a GS and it feels like an elephant, but when you're done with these courses, it maneuvers and it's nimble like a mouse.
That's what everyone keeps telling me.
Finish 1 week in there and done.
That's how I like to learn.
It is one of the best courses. He also does one. He does the Canada-U.S. border all the way, East Coast to West Coast. Yeah. He does a South America ride. He does a bunch of them.
He sounds like someone I should just
Rawhide,
connect with anyways.
No, check out Rawhide. Jim is the guy that runs the thing, and he's been doing this for 30, 40 years. But where was I going with this?
I don't know, but God bless people like that.
Yeah,
seriously.
No, he's passionate. You talk to this guy, since you're talking about books so much, he is a person that when you listen, you just feel like you're learning from a book. Yeah. Because it's so detailed and informative and instructional, and it's just, it's an amazing experience.
And thank God people like that find themselves in a teaching position,
Yeah. No, what he does is outstanding. But how did I get to that topic?
I don't know. We were talking about just other people's foray into the motorcycle.
Into the motorcycle world. Yeah. So I was taking one of Jim Hyde's courses, and I was doing a class with like 20 people, and it was actually a pretty big episode. I interviewed everybody for like 5-10 minutes, and there was a guy. He was taking the course. I think he was like 82 years old, on the GS, and he was conquering it like nothing. But when I spoke to him, I go, "When did you start riding?" He's like, "Oh, dude, I've been in the back of my mom used to hold me as a baby." I'm like, dude, that's insane. So it's interesting, but I find very few people that get into it like in their 20s or 30s. Yeah. Like it's just, you never
Unless
see it.
it's like a midlife crisis. That's a very common.
And the midlife crisis, are midlife crisis? I feel like a midlife crisis is, I'm making more money now, and I can just afford the Porsche, or I can afford the Lamborghini,
the luxury,
the luxury. Yeah. And then people are like, "Hey, that's a midlife crisis." No, dude, it's just I can afford it. I can do whatever I want.
I can get the toys now. Yeah,
I can get the toys. So I don't believe in midlife crisis.
I don't either, or at least I believe in multiple midlife crises. Crises. There you go.
Now, you model.
You do photo shoots. You do marketing. What's your title? What's your experience? And what can you teach us? And what's some advice? And give us your wisdom.
Well, it's the origin story. I went to college for marketing. That was.
I'm sorry, I gotta ask this real quick
yes.
before we continue. Are you originally from California?
No, so I'm originally from DC, and I moved out to California to go to college. I went to FITM and I studied merchandise marketing, and that was something I decided very early on in high school that I was going to major in marketing in the fashion industry. And nice. I basically, at that time, I had two choices of schools, and that was FIT and FITM. And FIT in New York, it was required that I take 2 additional years to get a bachelor's from Columbia. Or no, NYU. And I didn't want to pay for that. As much as I would have almost preferred to be wise. In New York City. Yeah, I was like, that's a lot of money. And so I'm glad that I came out here to California, because I came out here at 19. And I've been here ever since, haven't left. So it's been almost 20 years. I just aged myself. But yeah, so I've spent more time here in LA than I have anywhere else.
I love it. I love LA.
It's hard to leave.
It's hard to leave. This is how you describe it.
Other than money.
I like LA. I love California.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Because you can keep the traffic. Yeah. And I've earned the right to talk smack with my 2 decades. But I have had a wild time here in the past 20 years, let me say. I mean, again, working in the fashion industry in particular. So I went to school at FITM, graduated with a marketing degree, immediately started working in the industry.
Good for you.
It's been great. I've had a blessed career of sticking with the same thing for 2 decades, and I've become quite good at what I do because of that. I've been in, for the most part, one geographical area, which has afforded me the luxury of building a beautiful network to tap into. So the work that I do comes very easily to me now, which is awesome. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
A lot of experience earned.
Absolutely. Don't regret a thing. I'm glad I stuck with it, and I do enjoy it. I think it's important to do what you love and love what you do. And again, that's also a privilege. Yeah. So I've leaned into my career, and I've really leaned into being in Los Angeles. But so my title now, I own my own company. So I run a marketing agency. It's a full-service creative marketing agency, and I work with mostly small businesses designing full-scale marketing campaigns, which includes content production, primarily for paid advertisement and paid placement, but also creative assets for social media and other uses. So I help companies build a extremely optimized digital footprint in particular. A lot of my background also has to do with marketing activations. Some of my most favorite jobs were I worked with Los Angeles Dodgers, Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Clippers, LA Galaxy.
Oh, my God.
I know. And most of my work with them was when they were winning championships. So I have a Clippers ring. I have a Warriors ring.
Get out, really?
And I have a Dodgers ring.
Get the fuck out of here. That's amazing.
So I ran a lot of the in-arena marketing campaigns as they pertain to digital tie-ins. So if they had app activations.
Which was your favorite ring, by the way?
Okay, ring, just aesthetics?
Yeah.
Dodgers
ring.
Yeah. Warriors was a close second, but the Dodgers ring was pretty freaking cool. Out of all the sports, though, I'm a way bigger soccer fan.
I had Stacey Johns here. Do you know her?
Yeah.
She's the CFO, COO of LAFC. So she's been on the podcast.
Oh, that's amazing.
She brought her ring.
Yeah.
That fucking thing is...
It's massive.
Look,
they're massive.
Black,
yeah.
It's black and gold with diamonds, and it looks fucking sick.
It was funny, like, especially when the Warriors gave me one, part of me was like... Thanks. Because I wasn't a fan. I mean, I enjoyed working with them, but I was like, but then I realized, again, privilege of getting something like that.
Hashtag privilege.
Yes.
Hashtag blessed.
Yeah. So I didn't take it for granted. Don't get me wrong. And I was blessed. I was blessed to work with honestly, it was such strange timing because, again, all of them won when I was working with them. After being like,
if you want to win,
yeah, just hire me.
I'm going to charge a broker fee.
I got good juju.
That's right.
But no, Galaxy was probably my favorite. Not only because they were their in-house marketing team was so much fun to work with. Yeah. Like they were just really innovative and progressive with their thinking, and so there wasn't a whole lot of red tape to deal with.
So how did you get? Because I'm curious.
I jumped from fashion to the Warriors. Yeah.
Like boom. But how did you get into these sports? Like how did you get from exactly? What was the transition from fashion, working in small businesses to getting sports to now running an agency?
So that actually is reverse. So in high school, I was I'm like, let me back it up. I was an athlete my whole life. And when
what sport?
Primarily basketball.
Nice.
Big basketball fan. I have a very strange amount of knowledge of basketball players, in particular in the late 90s, early 2000s. And we recently lost Dikembe Mutombo, unfortunately. He was the guy infamous for no, not in my house. But no, I was a big basketball person. And then my sophomore year of high school, I just stopped growing, and I was a very tiny forward. And all the other girls were these massive women that just kept growing. And so I basically had to leave the sport because I couldn't physically compete. I physically couldn't put on.
You were forced out of it.
I could not put on weight. And so as an athlete, I was like, well, I need to find another sport because I'm not stopping. So I tried soccer because it was the off season, and I was like, well, whatever. I was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I was born to play that sport. And there's no ego involved in this whatsoever. I just, the ball and I were one. The other thing that I learned was I was goofy-footed.
Yeah.
So
what does that mean?
That means I was a left-footed player, but I'm right-handed. So I actually surf with my left foot as my dominant as well. So they call that goofy-footed.
Interesting.
And so because of that, not many people were. And so I segued into a niche position and immediately started on varsity because of that. And
yeah, it's a huge advantage, I guess. Yeah, if you're deep and you're practicing all the time and people are hitting with their dominant foot and it's their right.
Yeah. And there was 10 girls that wanted to play right striker, and there was one that could play left striker, and that was me. And I was good. So I got really good, and I got recruited out of high school, and I played semi-professionally in Spain.
Wow.
So I moved to
Spain or Barcelona?
Logroño, outside of Bilbao, which is northern Spain.
Yeah.
La Rioja region, great wine. So I was 17 moving to Spain to play soccer. And I had a contract where basically I got a visa essentially as long as I was playing.
Yeah.
I had a blast. I was on a co-ed team. We played soccer every day. We went to school to learn Spanish, and we would just play soccer. That was our life.
Poor thing.
It was awful. No, I'm kidding. Especially as a 17-year-old. I was already well-traveled at that point because my father worked for the government. And being in Europe alone for my own reason was again, super empowering.
Yeah.
And for my own skills.
And with the yeah.
Yeah. I was I'm here because I'm good. I'm here because I work my butt off, right?
Yeah.
Fast forward to I was practicing one day, and I know. I got stepped on by a close to 200-pound man. He stepped on my left foot and broke every metatarsal in my foot. And I looked down, and my foot swelled up to the size of a watermelon within nanoseconds. And I immediately thought, it's over. And it was. I had to go home. I got injured, couldn't play, lost my visa. And I literally, at 17, had to pivot my entire mindset of what my future was going to look like.
How emotional. So this whole thing was within 6 months?
Yeah.
10 months?
6 months. So it was wild because I talked to my parents recently, and I was like, I feel like I should have been put in therapy when that happened. This is one of those core trauma memories that I'm like, oh, I really could have benefited from like talking to someone about that, because the psychological impact was far greater than I and my parents gave it credit. Like,
it depends on the type of therapy, right? Because if there was like a therapist that's kind of like, you know, dragging it on and justifying that you're right versus, hey, you
move on with your life, pivot. Yeah. And also,
again, it depends on the therapy and the therapist and the process.
Well, you know? it was a cultural shock for me. I had grown accustomed to living in Spain on my own.
No, just what you said. You know, you were there for your own right, for your own skill.
Yeah.
Ha ha, Dad, look at me, and just
all of a sudden, bye. And you know, it was sunny too. I didn't have any plans on going to college because
you were a fucking
I was
soccer athlete. Yeah.
So now I'm back in the States, living with my parents, injured, having to go to school, and I'm like, I don't even like know what to study. Like, I literally
you're like, I don't even speak English now.
My Spanish was impeccable. Well, not unfortunately, I learned Spanish. So I say things like hasta luego and gracias.
Oh my God.
So when I go to Mexico,
pues hombre,
they look at me funny. So as a 17-year-old, I had to completely pivot. And a lot of athletes can relate to me and empathize with me on this one, but like, our brains are different. We are extremely hard on ourselves, and we're probably perfectionists, you know, so
narcissist.
It's true. And so that my ego death that I was experiencing at 17 is a little in over my head. So I decided to completely pivot, and I was like, well, I'll dabble at that fashion marketing thing. And so that's when I spent 2 years in community college studying business, and then I picked up my bags and came to LA. But yeah,
well, you were trying to go to NYU, but that was too expensive. And then LA, California made the most sense financially.
No. If you stay in DC, you will work for the government in some way, shape, or form, right? Some facet, you're going to be attached to the government.
There's a lot of strip clubs there, too. I went there for the first time. I was like, there's so many strip clubs. And good pizza.
It's true. So yeah, you're either a stripper or you're working for the government. So I was a massive hippie. That was evident as a child. I was obsessed with peace signs and the Beatles and, oh God, I mean, I was such a hippie, born in the wrong decade, that's for sure. So there's no way I was working for the government, let alone living in that area. So I could not get farther from that environment, which was sunny California. Just polar opposite of what I had grown up with. And
it's true.
When I moved out here, I was like, wow, this is it. This is it. The beach is right there. It's, you know, I've got fashion, I've got Hollywood. Like, and again, as a 19-year-old, I was like, hell yeah. Yeah. So, but working in the fashion industry in Los Angeles in the early 2000s was wild. I mean,
it was popping.
It was popping. And looking back on it, I had a really, really amazing stint in that industry in particular. I mean, I was working with Vogue at a very young age. I was directing runway shows. I held titles that most people take a lifetime to get, but it's because of timing. I mean, maybe not solely because of timing, but timing had a lot to do with it. I remember one of my first jobs, my boss walked in and he said, I think Facebook is allowing businesses to have pages. Can you look into that? And from that moment on, my career completely shifted from traditional marketing to digital marketing. And so I've been working in that field since Facebook was a thing.
What was that, like 2000?
2007.
2007, that's right.
Yep. So, again, long story short, I am, for the most part, a marketing expert. I've worked with really cool companies. I've worked with Amazon. I've worked for Meta. I've worked for British Petroleum. I don't like working in corporate. It's just, this hippie's just not cut out for that. I do really enjoy working for small businesses. So the skills that I was able to gain with 2 decades working in corporate, I apply to the small businesses that I work with. I've managed millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of advertising spend. Wow. And I apply that same strategy to the clients that I work with now, which is really awesome because they don't have those kind of budgets. So to have someone like me on their side educating them.
Very valuable, yeah.
It's super valuable. And again, no ego involved. I absolutely love doing it. And I can see instant success. There's very little red tape. And I, as a small business owner myself, really appreciate working with people who their business is their baby. They've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. And I respect that. And I really want that to succeed as much as they do.
I'm kidding about this, but like the first thing I think about is like you should start an agency called Hippie Agency or Daisy 8 Marketing or whatever.
Well, it's called Wayward Creative. So the name.
Where is the name?
The name is fun. So my dad, I give him so much credit. I was raised on vinyl. They did this to me. We had wood panel walls in our living room. I mean, that's how like hippie we were.
That's awesome.
So
did you guys have a Volkswagen van?
No, we had a Volkswagen Bug.
Oh,
and we had avocado shag carpets.
Yeah, baby.
It was groovy. So he raised me on vinyl, and he, as a young person himself, traveled around photographing The Who, John Denver, The Beatles, Elton John.
Wow.
So I had a very, very artistic upbringing. My mother's a painter. So it was funny when I started traveling on my own, I actually want to say my dad was interviewed when I was playing soccer, and he called me his wayward daughter. So if you've heard the song Carry On, My Wayward...
Carry on my wayward
son. He got it from that, and he calls me his wayward daughter. And so I was like, I took that name and basically turned it into Wayward Roamer, because... I was roaming. I mean, I was bouncing around the world. I mean, starting with Spain, I finished college. I was in the fashion industry. I was traveling to Paris and, New York. And I've traveled a lot. I did 3 years traveling internationally. I did not have an address for 3 years. I just was
so cool.
Straight traveling, one way, plane tickets, no round trips, which was amazing. Living out of a suitcase becomes cumbersome, especially when you're transitioning from Bali to Greece in the dead of winter and you have a surfboard and you're trying to get that around Naples, Italy. Like, it's a little difficult.
Yeah.
But I somehow made that happen. So yeah, Wayward Roamer and Wayward Creative come from my roaming, my travels.
When in Rome.
Rome was phenomenal. I did get 2 parking tickets there, though.
I liked Rome my second time around. The first time I went, I was like, fuck this place. It's all ruins and shit. Everybody's a dick and rude. Stuff. And like, I went downstairs to take a piss, and the guy says, scusi, you got to pay $1. And I'm like, dude, I already started. And he's like, you got to pay. You want me to stop midstream? And
like, I will take that euro out of your pocket.
He took it out of my pocket. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I thought it was so rude.
Oh, I love it.
But...
I love stuff
then
like
the
that.
Second time around, I went and I explored outside of the ruins. Beautiful.
Have you taken a shit in a hole in the ground?
In China.
Yep.
I was in Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, and they had certain bathrooms with the hole, and they had certain bathrooms with the regular chingaderas.
Those are always fun to walk into because you're expecting something, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah, the first time I was like, oh my God.
Okay. What do I do with this?
Yeah, I'll just pee. Well, being a guy, you just want to pee.
Well, number 1 is easy. Number 2 is a little.
That we lost that camera, which is fine, but
that was my bad angle, anyways.
I thought that was your good angle.
This is my good angle. Yeah. So we're still safe.
Yeah, good. Yeah, this is the one. But no, I did that. But it's funny because just in June was the first time where it's like, I'm going through a divorce. And I've been raising my son on my own, and the mom's like, well, can you bring him to, she was in a different country. Can you bring him here to this country, and I'll watch him. I want to spend some time with him. And I'm like, well, I've been watching him for like 3 years on my own. So I'll drop him off there, but like, this is like Qatar area.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take the long way home. So I just did a backpack. And I did Qatar, Armenia, Greece, Milan, took the train all the way down, went to Monaco, Nice, and then Barcelona, and just with a backpack. And then I did half hospice and half hotel, and I was like, this is cool, because I've never done that experience.
I commend you because...
It was amazing. I mean, I only did it for like 9 days.
But that's a lot.
It's a lot of 9 days, and I loved it. It was more than enough.
Was it?
It really was. It really was, because there was even what threw me off. The only thing that I missed was in Monaco. I wanted to be there for like
F1.
No. Well, I did the F1 tour.
Yeah.
On one of those EV replicas of the
Oh,
1930s.
nice.
So that was cool. And I did a whole YouTube video.
Yeah,
with the
it's
guy.
a trip to be there when they're actually doing the race,
Oh,
because you get to like
I'm
hang out of the
sure.
windows and just watch them go through the town. Oh, it's phenomenal.
But I got stuck in Milan because there was a train strike.
Oh, it happens all the time. Yeah,
It happens
it's
all
like
the time.
Air France,
so
yeah.
I missed a day or two,
Ugh.
and I was supposed to spend a day or two in Monaco, and I wanted to go to the casino. So what's funny is the day that I went to the
007.
casino, exactly, and I like casinos. So I went to the casino, and when I got there, it was morning, but my flight was leaving from Nice in the afternoon because I lost the 2 days in Milan. So I get there, and I'm ready to gamble,
Yeah.
right? So I show up, and when I get there, they're like, there's no gambling right now. I go, what do you mean there's no gambling right now? They go, from 5 a.m. to 2 in the afternoon, it's for tourists. And then I sat there for like 45 minutes convincing myself, do I want to do a tour of a fucking casino? I want to play.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do no tour. Anyway, so I'm waiting in line. I'm like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. Anyway, so I get to the front. I've kind of convinced myself to do the tour. And when I get to the front, this guy looks at me. He goes, the casino's closed.
Oh, stop.
Like, that's how much of a gambler I looked at that moment, because I had like a fucking YSL bag.
You're like drooling.
I'm like drooling. He's there's no casino right now. Come back after 2. And I was like, oh okay. And I walked away, and then I was like, I should have done the tour.
Like, damn
but then there's a fucking line. I was like, oh, I'm not doing this fucking shit. I'm over
Well,
it.
okay, so that actually, we're both well traveled, and this is one of those things where it's like logistics matter, right?
Right.
And I had a similar experience with Sistine Chapel. They were like, well, you have to do the tour. You can't just like go through the Vatican and then pop over to the Sistine Chapel. You got to do the whole thing. And I was like, that's a lot. Like, I really just want to see the Sistine Chapel. So, and it's like a one-way in, one entry here, but then you exit in order to traffic control. So you have to kind of, if you don't know that going into it, it could throw your whole damn day or your whole damn trip, because like, it's like, oh, well, this only happens at 2 p.m. So bouncing around with one-way tickets,
it's crazy.
I had a lot of those circumstances that were super depressing too, because it's like, oh man, like, just missing. I missed out on Nepal because of that, which was a big one on my list. But I just, timing wise, I had to pop from India to Sri Lanka. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, Monaco, like again, when you miss out on those, like Monaco is one of those. It's like it's really out of the way from everything.
It is.
Else.
It really.
Like,
it's a. You got to go there.
Like you got. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it's still there. So
exactly, it's still there. But I think if it wasn't just for that one delay with the trains, it would have been. And then I had another delay where. I was distracted by people.
It happens, as you should be.
And I got on the wrong train. So both trains were going in both directions.
Yes.
But I paid for the VIP train that gets there in 5 hours.
Yep.
And I jumped in the public train.
I've done that.
So I walk in the public train, which is like, an 8-hour, 9-hour.
Free for all, sitting on top of people.
No AC.
Yep.
I walk in this thing, again, all with my, proudness and stuff. And I go, I think that's my seat.
Oh,
like,
no.
This motherfucker. Okay,
like,
bro.
There's no seating. Yeah, exactly right.
And then after a while, I'm like, there's no AC, there's no nothing. Then the lady's like, let me check your ticket. She's
You're like, there's
on the
no
wrong
way
train.
this is. Yeah, exactly.
and she goes, you're on the wrong train. I go, what do you mean the wrong train? Am I going the wrong direction? No, you're going the right direction, but it's going to take like double the time.
Yep.
And there's a lot of stops. And then there was a girl sitting next to me, and she pulls out like the wet wipes, and she starts cleaning herself, and she gives me one. She's like, here, because I'm like drenched. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. I go, what kind of train is this? She goes, this is for the poor people.
Oh my God. She just right to the point.
And I'm like, look, but I swear I bought the nut big. She's like, it doesn't matter. Dude.
I've done that. I did that.
But it was beautiful.
Oh, okay. So and I was going to say, sometimes in those moments, it's like a blessing in disguise. I did that from Kandy to Ella in Sri Lanka, and I thought I had done my research appropriately. It's a 7-hour train ride, and you're actually supposed to do the reverse. You want to end up in Ella, not Kandy, and because there's nothing to do there. And then it's also like the next stopping point, which I think was Weligama, which is all the way in the south of Sri Lanka, the surf town. I had to backtrack, so I did the 7-hour train ride in the opposite direction, and then basically ended up getting on a flight to get down to where I was supposedly going to be 2 hours away from. I was like, oh, that was fun. Good time.
Oh no,
it's 3 days later. But it's an adventure. I mean, it really is. That's part of what I love about it, because you learn more when you make those mistakes, right? And so I think there's like there's something inside of me that's like the more complicated something is, the more I like get out of it. And I think a good example of that is my first trip to Burning Man, which was not this year, but last year. And it was the first year in 40 years that it rained, and we all got stranded.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's right.
And they were going to call out the, what am I thinking of?
The Coast Guard.
Yeah, the Coast Guards, which they should have, to be quite honest.
Everybody started losing their shit.
Everyone lost their shit, except for me. And when it happened, I was so excited because I did not give a shit about my outfits or anything like that. I had zip ties. I had fire blankets. So I was like, I'm ready to be here for months if I have to. I could not. I mean, literally, I was like, who needs a zip tie? I made shoes out of trash bags. Like, I was thriving.
That's hilarious.
And then I went back to Burning Man this year, and I was like, oh, this is really easy. This is a little boring, not going to lie. So I like a little bit of chaos. I feel like I need it.
I think you need those. Those are trips that, I don't know, when people do it religiously, I'm like, you know, it's like you have to do it a couple times, you know, random times.
Yeah. But favorite country though. I don't have an answer for that. A lot of people ask.
I don't have a favorite country. I have favorite places, but
or favorite experiences too. I've got really awesome, and some of them are really tiny. Like I was in Cambodia on my way to Angkor Wat, and I was riding in a tuk-tuk, and it was really funny because like I'm like super focused on. I'm a very vigilant traveler too, because a lot of my travels are alone, and I'm a female, and you know the moment I lose my attention is when something goes wrong. So I'm hyper vigilant. It was really funny because all of a sudden I just heard these two like ding, ding. And I was like, what the hell was that? And I turned around and two children had latched themselves onto the side of the tuk-tuk on their bicycles to catch a ride. And I thought it was the cutest thing. And so I just started like filming them.
And the tuk-tuk is a 3-wheeled car, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's like all open.
Mm-hmm.
So like literally they're like right next to me. And they could not have been they couldn't have been cuter. I mean, it was so much like fun to just give them a ride to school or wherever they were going.
I had a moment when I was in Mumbai where there's just terrible traffic.
Oh God, you barely move. Yeah,
you barely move. Moscow's the worst traffic I've ever seen.
I haven't been yet.
Good to know, though. Beautiful city, but it is the worst traffic. Like literally, people are walking
comparative to LA.
Worst,
really?
10 times, 20 times worse. Their public transportation and trains, beautiful, amazing.
That's the caveat, yeah.
But when I was in Mumbai, this like 7-year-old girl was like knocking on my window, and I had like a Red Bull or something, and she's like, like I want.
The Red Bull, yeah.
The can. Why? I was like, recycle. They don't fucking recycle there, but I thought recycling, right?
A lot of trash everywhere.
So I give it to her, and she just wanted the Red Bull. She just wanted the little drop there. She's like, and she threw it. She's like, thank you.
That's hysterical. You're like, God. I just blessed that girl's day with
Red Bull.
Taurine.
With caffeine. Her parents are going to hate me,
Enjoy the diabetes.
But for some stupid reason, I was like, I did sugar-free. But for some reason, I was like, she wants to recycle this. This is nice. I'm doing a good deed.
And then that's one of those cultural things that you're like, oh, good to know. So we were talking about being exposed on the motorcycle, right? Like you're out with the elements, which is what I love riding through canyons for that reason. Because when you're riding through Topanga or Malibu Canyon and you're in your car, if you have a motor, if it's a little different, but you've got like walls essentially around you, right? Yeah. And so your viewpoint is only through that which of your, whatever your window gives you, right? But when you're on a motorcycle riding through the canyons, you're in the canyon, right? I mean, you're in it. So well, you can look up, down, around, back, behind, forward.
Not only that, but you can feel the change of temperature, like every 10 feet, every 15 feet, every 20, cold, hot, and shade.
It's an experience. I mean, it's a whole experience. And so, that is what keeps me riding.
You can feel the cold air on your body.
As you get closer to the coast.
But then you feel the sun on your back. Like it's you can't I don't know.
You can't make it up. No, and it's when people ask me why I ride, because they're like, oh my God, it's so dangerous, especially for a female, which I don't know what gender has to do with it. But that's the stuff. Like which is also why I don't mind being a passenger. I know a lot of people have a lot of ego with being the primary rider. Obviously I know how to do both, but I really don't mind being a passenger because
Really?
I get to look a little bit more than the rider does. So when I'm riding with my buddies through the canyon, I almost prefer to be passenger because I get to really take it in by being on the back of the motorcycle. I love being on a motorcycle.
I love being on a motorcycle.
I don't feel like it's dangerous unless I'm like weaving in dead stop traffic, and it's not the motorcycle. I don't feel that motorcycles are dangerous. There's nothing about them inherently that's dangerous per se.
Right.
Versus like a car, it's the same, danger that you're.
A few things. One, I was a GM for Harley Davidson, sold a lot of bikes. I did a book called Fearless Rider about safety. I've done a lot of courses. I've been riding forever. I strongly believe 95% of motorcycle accidents is rider error. Like, all bullshit aside, 95. I don't. Oh, there was a car, bro. If you were riding a little bit slower, if you were handling
you
better,
compensated.
Whatever. If your situation could have been controlled.
Yep.
I strongly believe 95% of motorcycle accidents are rider error.
Right.
Number two, what people don't consider, motorcycles are dangerous. Look, my grandfather used to say the only requirement to die is to be alive. How many times will you hear about the pro athlete that went to the Olympics, became a runner, this, that dies from lung cancer?
Right.
Like, it's the only requirement.
Yeah.
Gangbangers shoot, bullet escapes, shoots a mother breastfeeding a baby.
Right.
Like, it's the only requirement.
Yeah. You can get stabbed in Beverly Hills.
Right.
Yeah.
Which has happened. Yeah. And then number three, people don't take into account how two-wheeled vehicles worldwide dominate
Amen.
in South America and India
Asia,
and
all
Asia
over.
and Europe.
Yep.
It dominates.
Yes.
It's here where it's like people are so fucking careless. That comes back to the 90% in Colombia and Argentina.
Also,
like,
the state-by-state laws, and you know what I mean. We're not even cohesive about it. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like, Florida has a law where it's like, if you have insurance, you don't have to wear a helmet.
I think that's Texas too, and Colorado. Yeah. First off,
like, who wants to ride a bike without a helmet?
Okay, so
thank you.
I was in Colorado. It was funny. I was there to hang out with the Tiny Daggers.
Keep going, because I'm going to show you something too.
Oh yes, please. I was hanging out with the Tiny Daggers, which are 3 amazing women riders, and I got introduced to them via Instagram. And I met up with them in Denver, Colorado, and I was riding during that trip, and I remember I got to this mountain bar to have lunch. These 2 guys pull up on, I think they were Softails actually, but they pull up on their Harleys, and neither of them have helmets. Mind you, that day it was hailing. So they just had massive welts. Not only were they drenched, but they had massive welts on their face because they weren't.
Dome.
I'm like, you live in Colorado. Like, there's weather. It's not like you're in LA. I mean, also, I really like the way my face looks. Like, and I'd like to keep it that way, whether it's law or not.
And there's zero logic behind that.
You feel more wind?
So
I don't know.
24 years riding, never had an accident until
knock on that wood right there.
Well, until 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
And look.
Wow.
Look at it knocked
barely
off
touched.
The intercom system.
No, but like barely touched.
Well, no, this is. I mean, my point is, imagine not having a helmet.
Showy. I love them.
Oh, showy, yeah, RF 1200.
Hell
baby.
yeah.
No, it's a badass helmet. But look, the vents are gone. The shield was gone.
Yeah, but when a car gets hit, it's like dented to shit. You've
Right.
got like scratches and a loose pad there, buddy.
Right.
I mean,
No,
it look a lot worse. There's not even a crack.
But imagine not having a helmet.
Right.
Imagine this.
No,
was
I don't want
skin
to. I'd
or
rather
dome
not.
or
Right.
whatever the case is. So it I walked away with a scratch,
A little bit of road rash
and scratch.
Derma on that. That's all. Yeah. That's wild. I mean, I've got a friend that's going through like a 5th surgery for, busting his knee during last J-Tree ride out. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's another thing that I always talk about that people get stuck on. It's like people get a bike, they'll save $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 to get a motorcycle, and they'll have zero budget for gear. And it's like, dude, come on, guys, or they'll buy like used gear on Craigslist or something like that.
Or they'll go to the super, not going to name any names, fashionable places that sell motorcycle gear. I'm doing air quotes. Motorcycle gear that's really not motorcycle gear. Yeah,
it's just gear.
Some of the best advice I was given was dress for the slide, not the ride. You know, I remember when I was picking out my helmet, the guy was like, "Do you like your jaw where it is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I love it where it is." And he goes, "Yeah, if you want to keep it there, don't get it built well." But I remember when I tried it on, I was like, "It's actually not covering my chin."
Right.
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 So,
and that's another thing that people got to consider. People got to consider getting good fits,
Yep.
the right fit.
Yep.
You know, you got like people just, I'll get an XL. Like, well, maybe you're not an XL, and every brand's different.
I've got a tiny head, man. Shopping for helmets was not a fun experience. But again, I ended up with an amazing Shoei. I haven't switched helmets since. I've had the same helmet since I started riding. It's perfectly fine. I have a wonderful Aether jacket.
I love Aether.
They're great. They are great.
Their gear is amazing.
And especially for women. And Stellar Motor Brand, that is one of my favorite lines for women in particular. Jenna, the owner, she does both men and women, but she makes jumpsuits and one pieces that are comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Don't
they have gear at the bike shed right now?
They do. Yeah, you can pick it up at the bike shed. She's got a...
you could also go to www.bikeshed.com.
We love Bike Shed. We do. I love them.
And Remy left right now.
Wait, really?
Oh, you didn't know?
No.
Remy's returning to... so Laura's pregnant. And
they're going back to London?
No. Nice, France.
Oh, that's right.
It's French. Bonjour.
Oh, no. I knew that. Yeah. Well, they were running Bach.
Yeah, they were running Bach.
Yeah.
And then he opened up his other shop.
Yes. It was, what's funny? I was at the Triumph guy. Help me out. In the Valley. Oh, God. Kevin specializes in Triumph. Moto Chop Shop. We got there. Remy and Laura were there when I was there.
I was like Butcher Kevin, not Butcher. Right.
Kevin. Yeah, I don't know his last name. But LA Moto Chop Shop specializes in Triumphs. They were there, and she was like, "Yeah, we leave in a week." And I was like, "Oh man." But yeah, I love our community, especially in Los Angeles. I mean, there's a flavor for everyone. Like, you don't have to be in an MC. There's a ton of group rides. There's a ton of small little groups. In particular, I love the sober guys. Like, there's sober groups.
Beachside Moto, Franco, and Adam.
Oh, I love Franco. Yeah, all these people.
Franco!
All these people have been so friendly and accommodating. I mean, and I was a solo female jumping into this world, and it was really intimidating. And Jenna and I from Stellar Motor Brand, we were talking about this the other day, but I was like, I didn't get accepted easily necessarily in the female world when I first got in there.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Competition. Women can be tough on each other.
Jealousy, haters.
Well, I think they questioned motives a lot.
Motives.
Yeah, and so when I made a pact with myself when I first started, because again, it was psychological for me, and I said, I want to be respected as a rider above all. I want to be respected as a rider. And so I made sure to not step on toes or have an ego about what I was doing or any ulterior motive than being a good rider. So I didn't even date in the community because that's not what I was there for.
Right.
I didn't pledge any MCs, but I hung out with a bunch of MCs.
Which is part of the whole riding experience.
It is. Even conflicting MCs.
Of course.
But I was very
part of the whole thing.
Impartial to all of them. I didn't sway one way or the other. But I mean, overall though, I will say the community is it's made up of beautiful, amazing people so far. I mean, I've had a blast, and it's another part of the reason of why I stayed in it. I had a stint out of it, partially because I was living overseas on riding scooters. Transitioned from
so cool
Harley to scooters.
2 wheels, baby.
I took, when I first moved to Bali, I took a lesson in scooters because, again, brand new to motorcycles, so I was brand new to scooters. So I took a riding lesson once I got out there, and the instructor was like, "Hey, you good to ride home?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? Let me try it." So he gets on the back of my scooter, and he goes, "We'll take the shortcut." And I'm like, "Okay." The shortcut was
insane.
Through a field, like a dirt path.
That sounds like a shortcut.
Like 2 feet wide, through a field of tall grass. And it was kind of funny too, because I was like almost home. So like the mouth of the shortcut was and within reach. And we came to a screeching halt because they were slaughtering a pig in the middle of the road.
Oh my God.
And I had to turn around. Also, I'm vegan. I just want to mention that.
Oh, no.
So I was like, okay, well, that just really ruined my experience. I was having a great
Hence
day.
the whole milk.
Yeah. Yes, that's why I turned down your milk in the coffee earlier.
I should have oat milk because I have plenty of people that.
Well, so many, honestly, what milk now? I went vegan for nutritional reasons. I love animals, don't get me wrong, but I'm not a traditional vegan. In fact, I'm plant-based, not vegan. Who can handle milk anymore? I think everyone is lactose intolerant at this point.
But you know, I was reading like a whole paper on like the peanut allergy thing.
Yes.
And it's like we created that pandemic
amen.
by not giving kids peanut butter.
Well, also,
like
we're putting garbage in our food now, like hormones in milk.
And I got into the oat milk train. I was like, all right, this is cool, you know. But then like somebody's like, dude, look at the ingredients.
Oh my God, it's like
just look at the ingredients.
Yeah,
you have like 20 different ingredients to create this.
And it's the same with oils too. Like, oh my God, coconut oil was all the rage until it wasn't, and now it's the devil. And
if you go back to the basics, you know, I started thinking I have no problem with like
clean eating.
Just clean eating and whole foods.
Yeah.
Which my 5-year-old goes, Papa, I know it's Whole Foods, but it looks like Whole Foods, and I'm like, it does look like Whole Foods, doesn't it? It's the English language rules.
Oh,
but you're right. It is Whole Foods.
Yeah,
like the whole phone thing,
or the fact that we have like 7 different words for the word car. And when someone's learning English, I feel really bad for them. I mean, I'm relearning Italian right now. I speak Spanish. And I'm still struggling.
No, English is crazy when you get into those like weird things. Those which I find like somebody was explaining it to me. It's just a rule. It's not the way it's pronounced or anything. It's just a rule. Yeah. So, and I always thought that.
An arbitrary,
like we all agreed on this rule that somebody made up that we're going to misspell words the way they want it because that's the rule, and we have all accepted it.
Other than Spanish, do you speak any other languages?
I speak a little bit of Armenian. I know bullshit in Russian, English, obviously.
Yeah. Was it hard to learn Russian and Armenian? They're not Romance languages. I know that.
So no, not at all. My ex is Armenian, and I didn't learn Armenian from her, but I was around it enough, and I've done enough business with it. But I've learned a lot from my son because my son goes to an Armenian school, and his grandparents is Armenian.
Yeah.
So when he was younger, he'd like say a lot of words, like he'd be like "Ura papa," and I'm like, "What?" And he's like "Hesa papa," and I'm like, "What are you saying?"
I need to figure this out.
like there was a time where he was like 3 years old, and we were at the Burbank Mall. And this lady was like da 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 da, and then he was like da 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 da, and then they were arguing, and I had to get another Armenian lady. I was like, "Can you translate?" And she's like, "Why do you want me to translate?" I go, "Because that's my son."
You're like, "I think my son is starting shit with an adult woman."
He's just starting shit like he just starts shit.
I love
that.
Like
I got him into like counting calories, not counting calories, but look at how much calories. What's the serving size?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And now we go to places. He goes, "Look, Papa, that guy's fat." And I'm like, "Hey, shut the fuck up." And the guy's like, "Hey, what?" And you're fat, sir. And I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry, sir."
Like we prefer obese.
Yeah. and I'm like, and
we prefer horizontally challenged.
But he's starting fights, and then the guy's like, "Hey, man, control your kid." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up."
Oh God, I love it.
It's this whole thing, but.
Well, I mean,
I've been learning languages through him, and then but Armenian, English, Spanish, basic shit.
Yeah,
I understand Italian because of the Spanish.
Yeah, the Romance language. I had to learn a lot of different languages, not fluently, but enough to order food because I am vegan, and when I was traveling, I was vegan. So with dietary limitations, it was a really great way to guide my travels. Where
was it the most difficult to travel being vegan?
Oh, that's an
India,
easy one.
Bali, France, right?
Hands down, France. They put butter in salads. They don't believe in olive oil for like sautéing vegetables. Butter.
Yeah,
also, they're kind of dicks about it too, because they're like, you'll eat what we give you. However, disclaimer, I did go to France again, Paris in particular, recently. I've been going for many years, many decades.
Different experience.
And they actually, one of the arrondissements is actually almost full vegan. So now, so that's what I was going to say. When I was traveling, I would have to stay in vegan neighborhoods. So I would look up restaurants first. I would pick a country, right? So I'd be like Thailand. all right, well, where am I going? Chiang Mai. Okay, in Chiang Mai, I'm going to Google or go to Happy Cow. It's an app for vegans, and it's a user-generated app too, which is nice.
Brought to you by Happy Cow.
Yeah, so they'll actually tell you like, oh, it's actually vegan, or they have vegan options, or just don't even come here. So I would cross-reference that to the map, right? And wherever there was a higher cluster of vegan restaurants, I would get my Airbnb there, right? Nice. So I was staying by that, logic, I was staying in areas that were off the beaten path, not necessarily the major cities. And it was, in most cases, a whole different experience than if I just went to London, England. You know what I mean? Like, so I really enjoyed that and learned how to order food, how to say no milk, no dairy, no fish, no meat, no cheese in a bunch of different languages. And it was such a cool way to interact with people too, because in some of these remote places, they didn't even know what vegan was. Eventually, when I was in Greece, I got really good advice of printing out cards in the language of the country I was going to. Sans milk, sans, sin leche, and no eggs. And so I started doing that, and I basically would go to a restaurant.
No animal.
Yeah, no animal. And I would hand them, no carne. I would hand them cards and be like, this is my limitations. It was most easy in Asia. It was most difficult in France. It was ironically simple in Italy, which are my people. So they very progressive.
I'm sure. Pastas and basils and.
I will say I did. I will say this. My plant-based diet was a choice, and it was a nutritional one, primarily because what is in our food, especially in the U.S. I mean, the FDA, we just lie to ourselves on the labels at this point. So when I traveled to other countries, like Sweden, for instance, Sweden, they legally list the amount of antibiotics and hormones in everything that you purchase, including the meat. So you're a more informed consumer, right? You're still probably going to get the meat, right? You're going to bring the steak home, but you will probably make different choices, right? You're going to have like a higher quality steak or, grass fed or whatever, right? So I really appreciated that. And I will not stay vegan my whole life. I will probably reintroduce fish. I will probably reintroduce, certain things like eggs. But I would really like to do it in a way where they're my own chickens, right? And I'm feeding them myself, so some form of control, but also just, I care about my body.
Yeah.
Not that other people don't. I for me, it's just very important what I put in my brain and what I put in my body.
Yeah. No, I don't, I mean, again, I'm not an expert or anything. I think if you go into like a vegan cleanse, like temporarily.
Oh yeah,
I recommend anybody to try it out.
And I'm not like anti-meat or anything. Right. I'm like, if you eat meat, eat clean meat at least.
But I do try to tell people that if you're gonna go on a vegan diet, there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it.
Oh yeah, you could be stuck with eating carbs and candy. Yeah. I mean, literally. Yeah.
Like big time. Or not only that, but do you take supplements or anything?
I do take supplements. So
do you do like irons and
irons? There is a vegan version of omega-3s. There's a vegan version of collagen. There's a vegan version of.
You got to do it the right way.
Exactly. There's a way to do it. There's actually I've been doing a ton of research and I try.
What
to
do you do for like red blood cells and? I mean, there's so many protein.
I was going to say there's plant-based proteins. There's a lot of innovation in science right now. In the dietary world, in particular. Lab-grown meat and fish. And there's a company based here in LA, and I do not remember their name, but they are doing mercury and plastic-free, microplastic-free fish right now.
Amazing.
It is. We're like at the burgeoning beginning of this evolution, but it's exciting for me because again, we're kind of taking back the power of what we're eating and what we're consuming, and I really hope that it gets adapted on a mass scale because I'm very anti-overproduction. That's another thing in America in particular that we do, the mass production and overproduction. We do not need this much food, guys. We don't. We really don't.
Yeah,
we are a very wasteful society.
That's another
fact that's going on right now. This is the first time in the existence of humans that the poor people are fat because of the excess food and the and like the only time that I really lose weight is like when I'm eating like maybe like once or twice
calorie deficit,
little like not even calorie deficit, like I'm talking about like really a little bit. And once you start doing that, you're like, well, I've been overeating like all my life.
We're not farming from 4 a.m. to sundown anymore.
Not at all.
So we don't need
we're sitting in our
that
cars,
many calories to function and survive the day. I mean,
or my other favorite one is, you know, when people are trying to force breakfast, like it's the most important meal of the day. And it's like, dude, your first meal is the most. You just
woke up. Let your body adapt. Actually, the first thing you need is about 20 ounces of water.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then fiber.
And to correct the proper terminology, it's your first meal that you have is the most important.
Agreed.
Whenever you want.
Whenever that occurs.
And when you do have it, it should be something wholesome. It should be whatever you're into, you know, vegan, whatever. Yeah. But it shouldn't be chocolates. It shouldn't be chips. It shouldn't be junk food. It shouldn't be fast food, because it's your first meal. But it doesn't mean, because there was a time like 7-8 years ago, I was making breakfast. And I'm like, why am I making breakfast? I'm not even hungry.
Right.
Like I was literally like, I'm not even hungry.
It's one of those like shoulds. Like you feel like you should. Yeah,
it's marketing.
That's true. It's what I do for a living.
It's marketing. Breakfast, the first meal of the day, marketing, the cereal companies, marketing, saying eggs, meat, all that. There's proof that the sugar companies paid doctors to say.
Oh, do you want to know? This is a fun fact. The largest financial contributor of the American Heart Society. Do you know who it is?
Probably Kellogg's or
McDonald's. So right?
Wait, I have one. Oh.
Exactly. The very company that's perpetuating diabetes and heart disease is the biggest contributor of funding to the American Heart.
And it's back to it's absurd, and it's back to the whole thing where it's like the poor are fat. That's never existed. Our children?
Oh, God. Kids should not have diabetes. There's it's not an inherited disease necessarily. Certain types are. But so the fact that their kids are getting autism, we have a rampant rate of ADHD. Like this didn't occur back then. And I think our diet and the evolution of our diets has a lot to do with it, and I think consumers are getting kind of hyped to
the drinks and the soft.
So it's not so the veganism. I don't want to make it seem like I'm on a high horse by any means.
No, everybody has their like. I would never do vegan, but like I am about whole foods and taking care of your body, however it is.
My biggest advice to anyone is go and get a blood test. Go and get a blood test and let a nutritionist, a certified nutritionist, and a doctor tell you what you're deficient in and what type of diet is best for your blood type and your body.
I agree.
Because if you're doing it based on your lifestyle and your blood type, you can't go wrong. I mean, that doctor literally might determine that you should only eat red meat. And if that's the case and that's the best thing to do, then do that and do it well.
Right.
I did that because I wasn't feeling great. Again, I was an athlete. And I went through this period of time in my late 20s where I was working out every day per usual, and I just didn't feel good. I wasn't really feeling 100% every day. I wasn't sleeping well. I was kind of just floating. And I decided to go and get a bunch of tests done. And sure enough, after all the tests, a medical doctor said, try plant-based, try it for a few weeks and see what happens. I never felt better. I literally was like, wow. And so for me, it was like, well, why would I go back to the way that I was eating? So that's been about 8 years since I made that change.
Wow.
Prior to that, I was vegetarian. When I was living in Europe, I decided to cut out meat because I didn't want to lose my contract because of getting sick, and lo and behold, I got injured. But so it's been a while since I had meat. But the plant-based diet really paid off during COVID for me because I ended up propagating a lot of my own food. I was eating really clean, and I wasn't doing a lot of processed foods. So I wasn't like beholden to going to grocery stores and you know what I mean? And it was kind of nice. I was like, wow, well, if Armageddon did happen, like I could definitely live on a farm and, you know, feed myself. I'd be okay with that.
It's not, I think
saying it's a high horse thing is bullshit. It's an educational thing.
I think we all should hold our bodies to a higher esteem.
It's education. It's that. I'm gonna throw my little high horse thing, which is not high horse. It's just the way I raised my son.
It's a short horse.
Yeah. I was driving and my son sees McDonald's. He goes, "Look, Papa, McDonald's." And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "What do they have in there?" And I go, "Junk, maybe then. It's just junk." And he goes, "It's disgusting, huh?" And I go, "Yeah, it's disgusting." And I just found out his uncle's
took him to
parents
McDonald's.
Took him to fucking McDonald's.
This is a big deal, by the way. This is
a
very big deal.
I was fucking furious. No, I
don't blame you.
I was fucking furious. And he goes, "Papa, you're not going to be
poison
happy."
in my child.
And I go, "What?" And he goes, they got me McDonald's. And I go, are you fucking serious? And he goes, "Papa, the French fries were pretty good.
I know.
But I didn't like the chicken nuggets. They were
good.
like disgusting. Like it was like fake chicken.
So he actually has a palate.
It wasn't like your chicken, Papa. And I was like, oh my God, that made me feel good. But I was so furious. This happened last week. I was like, this is fucking bullshit, because like this last 2 weeks is the first time that I get a break. His mom came back and this, that. So now I'm like, all right, let me just do my thing. And I'm like, so you've been playing iPad and eating McDonald's now? Like that's on the fucking agenda? This is fucking
like everything that I try to get you away from,
but he's turning 6. So
it's got to be hard though, raising a child in today's world with all the tablets, and I mean, because what's going to happen is they're going to see their friends and they're going to want to do that, and then you're the asshole that's keeping them from it. But it's like, I also want you to live a good, healthy life.
And it sucks because it goes away so fucking quick.
Yeah.
It goes so because his whole life he was raised like that with me, and then he just goes to
one trip to McDonald's.
Well, he went one trip to somewhere else, to a country, and he was there for 4 weeks. And when he came back, he just wasn't into the learning games anymore. And I was like, dude, you were reading and writing and doing math. And,
it's tough. I mean, in all of these things that we're talking about, the fast food, the the tablets, they're dopamine hits, and so that's dopamine, and getting quick hits, instant hits of dopamine is what addicts deal with. And so. It's
so fucking in your face and accessible now.
It's almost unavoidable. I mean, you have to live on a remote island, and have your kids raised with like machetes and stuff in order to avoid it. But, I talk to a lot of my friends that have kids, because you think like before you have kids, you're like, oh, I'm going to parent this way. Like my kids will never touch, processed sugar. They're just I want my kids to crave blueberries and mangoes and, whatever. And then my friends are like, yeah, have a kid. See how hard you stick to those rules.
I don't know. Like my kid's pretty fucking on it. Like,
it sounds like
he doesn't. He'll look at somebody drink a soda and be like, ew, Coca-Cola.
I couldn't tell you the last time I had a soda. Literally, I think it's been probably 10 years.
I drink coffee, milk, and water. That's it. My son only drinks water or milk.
Yeah,
that's it. He doesn't drink apple juice. He eats apples. He doesn't eat apples. He eats oranges. He doesn't drink. Like people think drinking orange juice is good. It's not good.
No, the body's not supposed to crave anything processed. Like if you're craving sugar, like or if you want a sugar hit, like get in the habit of craving watermelon. You know what I mean? Or blueberries.
Yeah, like my kid eats watermelons and cucumbers and apples, and he likes steak and like whole foods.
And it's a cool way to practice discipline, like for yourself too. I mean, I again as an athlete,
fucking athletes, typical fucking athletes.
Our brains are wired differently. But I listen to Rich Roll's podcast a lot, and he's probably our vegan advocate, our biggest advocate out there. But he's an ultra athlete. I mean, the man has done X amount of Ironmans, and
Arnold too was on that vegan boat.
Yeah, and did it while vegan. Did a whole cookbook about being vegan and getting enough protein. Listen, we're fine.
Pretty, but I'm not trying to bust your balls here.
No, not at all.
But vegan is.
Vegan balls.
Veganism?
Plant-basedism? Yeah, I don't know.
It's pretty new, right?
That's another misconception. So
yogis like go back years.
No, yogis go back all the way to Buddhism. All the way to Buddha.
But vegan or vegetarian?
Vegan. So they were staunch believers of vegetarianism and veganism. I think that was literally a long time ago, like Siddhartha times, for vegetarianism at least. Veganism, I think, became widely accepted by the hippies in the 70s.
Hippies!
Thank you to the Source family. They ran a restaurant on Sunset Boulevard, which is now Pink Taco, ironically enough. Yes. Although I will say they have a vegan option. But the Source family, they were a commune cult, for lack of a better term, that had a vegan restaurant that was pretty popular back in the day. They certainly were the type that, wore white and had a stigma about them. But I think that's part of the reason why it's not, or was slow to be accepted by other people than hippies, because it just had this like stigma around it. Also, there's a lot of vegans out there giving us a bad name, kind of shaming people for eating meat. And it's like, man, listen, I'm a big fan of Native American culture. That's probably like, I love Native American culture, and they are all about using every part of the animal, killing the animal themselves, killing the animal not in excess and not unnecessarily, killing them humanely and using every part of it. And I respect the crap out of that. In fact, I think people who use bow and arrows over guns, lots of respect. Number one, it's a much better skill to acquire. Anyone can shoot a gun. Not many people can shoot a bow and arrow, let alone well.
But again, if you're talking about the best for the animal, use whatever is going to be more efficient. Like, don't practice on animals.
Yeah, but do we need hollow point bullets to shatter through a deer?
I don't think.
Do we
many
need
people are
a deer
using
that you're not going to
point.
eat, or you're only going to eat 20% of it?
Most of the
Granted,
people,
I know we have an excess of deer in certain areas, so that's
a big thing.
Necessary to hunt them.
And if we don't hunt them, we're going to have more predators.
I understand that.
And if we have more predators, then we're going to have more. Quick question: I cannot know the answer to this, but just to get it cleared out. Do you do vegan diet because more for your health or consciously?
Oh,
because you get into the pesticides and you get into everything of how they farm and how many rats and insects. And
also, organic is bullshit.
Big bullshit because I heard
because you can pay for vegan labels, you can pay for organic labels.
You cannot live in the United States and have 100% organic. Impossible if you're buying it from a store. Now, if you're doing it at home yourself...
I was going to say, if you're growing it at home, you've tested your soil, you're still going to need to use natural pesticides, let's be real.
Right.
No one wants to eat maggots.
I think the percentage of like organic and non-organic, it's like a 10% difference.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
But the price is like 40%.
which is more on that, actually. I have a funny theory on that. But no, there's been a lot of documentaries about how you can pay for those labels. So a lot of them, unfortunately, are BS. Or it's very low barrier to entry to get those labels. So you're really not doing yourself a favor by spending the extra $20 for the organic version.
It's like a subscription you pay yearly as a company to get the seal or something.
And you barely had to do anything. So, like free range chicken, what that actually means, or what do they say, cage free eggs or whatever?
Cage free, yeah.
Yeah, the requirement for cage free is, I think, like 30 minutes of sunlight, and then that's it.
Yeah, I just saw a video of grass-fed cows.
Yeah.
Did you see that video?
Yeah.
They're literally just headlocked into a gate
on top of each other, miserable. And that's when you start eating hormones, right? Like you're eating that animal's fear and adrenaline.
Yeah.
You're ingesting that because that's the life that they lived, right?
But I got a solution for that.
And that doesn't get out of your body, though. I mean, that's in our bodies, right? So if someone were to eat us, I'm not promoting cannibalism here.
I don't know.
You should do the clapping one. I'm kidding. But yeah, no. I mean, it's like that's just science. I'm not quoting any opinion here. So I think for me, the reason for going plant-based was nutritional. Now the reason
that's the primary.
Yes, and it's evolved
of course,
into.
And there's other stuff that comes along.
Yeah,
with it.
There's lifestyle. I mean,
but it was literally you weren't feeling good. You went to a doctor. You got tested.
It worked, and I stuck with it.
And you said, "Fuck it." Like,
but it is.
Why would I stop this?
It's hard to stick with it, especially when you're traveling.
Well, it's easier now.
When I was in Argentina, I ate so much rice and beans because Argentina, they're known for their cows. I mean, and it's like top notch meat, right? but I'm not the type of person that's
boludo,
like,
no
when
mete
in
carne.
Rome. Yeah, like I'm not going to be like, throw that steak my way. Because I've practiced a lot of discipline for a long period of time in a lot of countries. Going to the food markets in Thailand, I will say, like, going to a lot of food markets, because that's a part of the culture and experiencing the local culture. Like, we connect through food. I think it's extremely important. And so I would go to the food markets and I would walk around and be like, oh, I wish I could eat that. And I photographed the food because it was beautiful. And then I'd be like, what's that? And they're like, pig balls. And I'm like, never mind. Why is it so pretty?
Looks so good.
It really does. Great presentation. But I do feel like when I travel, because it's so important to me to gain that perspective, that I am missing out on a large portion of it by not expanding my dietary restrictions. And so I think in the near future, I'm actually getting my Italian citizenship.
Fucking awesome.
I'm so excited. It was such a big part of my youth. And so growing up
Who you
in
marrying?
an immigrant home, no, even better. I don't have to marry anyone. It's just, right? Strong, independent woman. But no, so I grew up in an Italian home. My dad spoke Italian. My Nonna was from Italy. She immigrated, and it was a big part of our culture growing up. And so I want to pass that down through the generations and be responsible for that. So alternatively, another reason for applying for my citizenship is because property in Tuscany is about $300,000 for a villa, and I can't even get a closet in Compton for that. So I want to live that under the Tuscan sun life if I can, and it's a third of the cost. So why not?
Yeah, that'd be beautiful.
And I'll have chickens, and I'll eat burrata.
I used to have a house down the street, like 2 blocks away, and I had my own chickens. They would lay eggs, and I'd grab my eggs and have it.
I love that. Did the coyotes eat them?
They were there forever, and then one day one was missing, and then another day
coyotes.
another one was missing.
Probably coyotes.
No, not coyotes.
Oh no,
Not
neighbors?
coyotes. And ripped apart. Like one night I went there, ripped apart. Leg there, it looked like fucking chupacabra or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so one of the nights I finally went there, and it was like the last one. I'd cover it, and they'd climb over the fence, and I don't know how. Raccoon.
I knew it. I knew you were going to say that. Do you know about...
But I'm talking about ripping it up.
Do you know about the raccoon gang in Chatsworth?
Mm-mm.
Infamous.
Mm-mm.
So apparently there's a literal gang that's just been around for generations of gangster raccoons, and you will drive through Chatsworth. I'm literally go today. And they'll be on the street corner, and I don't know if you know this about raccoons, but like, you know how cats do that little like arch thing to look bigger? Raccoons do something similar where they stand up and they puff their chest out, and they almost do like a come at me, bro. And they'll be doing that like thugs on the corner in Chatsworth, and they're like infamous for killing people's chickens and fucking shit up.
Yeah, yeah, and they're selling like coke and stuff and weed,
slinging crack.
They're like fucking. They've got most of the lowriders. They're raccoon lowriders.
They're all, I was gonna say they're all packing.
Yeah, they're all packing as shit. They got white powder in their fucking raccoons. What's up, man? They speak Spanish. Like,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. And they're vegan. Vegan gangster coke dealing fucking Chatsworth.
Welcome to Los Angeles.
Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up on that. We got an hour and 42 minutes.
Oh, amazing!
Any words of wisdom? Any fun tips you want to give out?
Enjoy the ride. Buy the ticket. Enjoy the ride. I can't remember who said that, but that's how I live my life, and it doesn't necessarily have to pertain to motorcycles. But I think what that means to me is just get out there. I think we're all put on this earth to see it and experience as much of it as possible in our lifetimes, however long or short they may be. And so I think it's imperative and almost dutiful of us to go out there and absorb as much as we possibly can, however we can accomplish that.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful world. Be present. Be present. Enjoy the moment. Worrying's like a rocking chair. Gives you something to do. Doesn't get you anywhere. Amen. And just fucking just ride boundless.
Yeah.
Life is a ride.
Yeah.
That's it.
Heck yeah.